Okay. Hi, my name is Seong Ryoo. I'm an assistant teaching professor of English composition at Penn State, Harrisburg. And my studies was about the effectiveness of hedged comments in formative feedback on L2 writing. So my presentation today will follow this order, the dialogic nature of written feedback and the problems occurring in the communication through feedback, and also the purpose of the study. And I'm going to summarize my research and discuss the results. And I'm going to present some pedagogical implication. So most of English composition classes at American colleges and universities adopt the approach to writing as a process rather than a product. In this process-oriented writing classroom, the act of writing is defined as a non-linear, recursive, and a mutually engaging activity of meaning-making between teacher and students. So in this context, the teacher acts more as a collaborator than an evaluator. So as a collaborator, the teacher gives written comments on students' drafts to best help them improve in their writing. Thus, giving and receiving feedback in an important channel of dialogic communication between teacher and student. So it's critically important to transmit appropriate and clear messages to the receiver. But sometimes I could see why the communication often fail, and how does the teacher send a message, and what are the intended messages of the feedback that are not being said, and what does the students comprehend the message delivered in written feedback. So these questions actually have intrigued me to go further in my research and to see, how teacher deliver their written message and how it will, especially L2 writers, comprehend the implicit message as they work on their revising process. So I start with my research with these two purposes. The first purpose of this study is to examine the effectiveness of hedged comments on students' revision success. And the hedged comments were categorized into two different subcategories. And the first one is a hedges with the revision strategies given. The second one is a hedges without the revision strategies given. And I also wanted to explore how L2 writers understand the hedges in the comment and why they made or did not make changes in their subsequent writing. So with these two aims of my study in my mind, and I researched in this context where the teacher, as a participant subject in my research, is a native speaker of English, and he's an expert in L2 writing at a college. And he has been teaching the first year composition courses that was specially designed for non-native speakers of English in an American university. So those students are linguistically, culturally diverse. A total of 30 students were recruited from the 3 sections of the teacher course. And the theme of this course is language. So throughout the semester, the classes examine the power of language and gender and language and academic discourse and bilingualism education. So since the most of the American writing classes, this teacher also adopt writing as a process. It's the students write a draft and submitting their draft, and teacher make a comments on that and return the comments back to students. The students revise their papers in response to teacher feedback. I collected 2 sets of data to see to examine the relationship between the hedged comments and the students' revising success. The first data set is the corpus of a total of 30 annotated comments to the draft writing and a total of 30 revisions, a total of 307 written comments that included hedges. The second data set is a retrospective interviews with the students. Well, although many scholars and researchers define hedging as quite a different way, but my research adopted the Hinkel 2004 definition of hedging. So it shows hesitation, uncertainty, displaying politeness and directness, and referring to the reader's point of view. So hedged comments are very commonly found in writing classes. So especially the teacher provides some negative feedbacks on their students' papers. But the way they express their feedback is quite implicit because they wanted to, to save a face using some politeness strategies and feedback. Well, that is very common in Western cultures, but I wanted to see how these type of approach also working for the international students here. So I wanted to give out some examples of what are the hedges with the revision strategies or without revision strategies. So when you say it's a bit unclear, you could be more detailed in your discussion. So, well, in this case, the teacher uses some lexical hedges, such as a bit, could, a little, probably, would, but it is now followed by some extra ways to revise. But the second set of the examples are here in the second column. Some comments was provided with a specific revision strategies, including hedges. So you might say, I might switch these opening two sentences to make the meaning clear. So although this sentence includes a might, may, a little bit, it seems, would, kind of the lexical hedges, but also it could get along with the specific revision strategies so that students will be able to know how to revise their paper. So here is the result of the analysis of the first data set. So the hedged comments with the revision strategies resulted in a higher rate of successful revisions, almost 62%, than hedged comments with the no revision strategies. And students failed more often in revising in response to hedged comments with the no revision strategies, almost 45% than those with the revision strategies. So I got some interesting finding from this research that the hedged comments with the no revision strategies were associated with the no revisions, well, almost 26% more commonly than those with the revision strategies. Then I wanted to go further to explore, so how students react to this kind of feedback and why they actually revise successfully or unsuccessfully. So based on the analysis of the data set, the retrospective interview with the students, and I found the students failed to understand the intended meaning of the hedged comments, and that they found difficulty to contextualize written feedback, no matter how long the feedback was. So some students say, the teacher said, I wonder if the author argument could have been persuasive. So, well, these students might not quite understanding what the intended function of this message is. So this student said, I don't know how I have to change it. Do I have to or not? This student even asked me whether, well, it is necessary to change some commented parts in his subsequent writing. And also some students just deleted the commented part. So by saying, I deleted my sentence in revising, I think this is what he wants in his comment. Well, quote, I might just see if this is a part of this tenant's idea. And also some students thought that revision is optional in case the teacher uses some lexical hedged modal verbs, kind of. So for example, the last example is just see this the screen, this comment, quote, maybe a bit more formal word, that is a question mark. And this comment is confusing to that students. So the students say, but I don't think that the revision is necessary, right? And also I found the students are having some cognitive emotional struggles. So students got the impression that the things were worse for the writer than the teacher initially intended. And also the students that were distressed emotionally by the way how comments are written. So some students say, when I got to the feedback, I was so depressed because I feel I have no idea how to revise it. I keep thinking to get what he's saying. I don't want to ask for it because I don't want to give him the bad impression about my English. So, and then other students say, writing is so stressful, but reading his feedback is also stressful. I just left it, revising aside, and work on other assignment. So because of this emotional stress, some students, well, got demotivated in revising by saying, I tried to revise this sentence several times as a teacher commented, but I don't think I cannot satisfy his expectations. So I'm so depressed. I'm so stupid. Is this so bad? Well, this kind of attitude actually the weaken or the lower the students' self-esteem. So some of students shared his responses with me by saying, I was so excellent students in the high school in my country, but I feel like I'm so low. Okay. So there are only a few of students. So only a few students say, well, because of this indirect way of the feedback, and some students developed their own coping strategies by making some schedules with the teachers for one-on-one meetings to make some sense of feedback, to explore the meaning behind the comments, and wanted to more explicit feedback guidance directions to know exactly how to do X, Y, and Z. And some students gained some of the personal self-confidence through the face-to-face meetings. Well, there are not many students who reported this positive attitude by developing their coping strategies. But well, there are some students who are strongly motivated to improve their writing. They reported it this way. And definitely students showed their well, explicit preference of a certain type of feedback because of their limited experience of formative feedback in their previous schools. And these students reported that they feel they were able to succeed in revising when the teacher stated directly, explicitly his intention about what they have to revise, or the teacher gave a specific revision strategies by making direct corrections or sometimes making positive comments. So these students wanted to know a tentative grade on their direct writing is although most of the writing teachers don't give out the letter grade on their direct writing, but these students wanted to know them because that actually helped them better understand how good their writing is. So here is a summary of the discussion. So L2 writing classroom is quite unique. So students' interpretation of the comments might differ from the intended meaning of the feedback. So L2 students, well, yeah, the L2 students had a limited experience of formative feedback in the L1 academic culture. They might interpret a formative feedback as a summative judgment of academic performance and even of themselves. And they criticize themselves in case that they cannot understand the intended meaning of feedback. So they struggled with the new rules of academic communication. I would say politeness is a culture, because most of my subject students here in my study come from a very unique culture that value high power relationship between the student and teacher in the process of giving and receiving feedback. So L2 writers might act upon to imperative or direct teacher comments more easily because of their previous experiences in their L1 educational context. And L2 students at developmental stage of a second language is also could be considered because most of the participating students in this study are internationals who studied English in an EFL setting, in English as a foreign language setting. So they might have a strong linguistic grammar knowledge while less than noticing the linguistic form in their use. So pragmatic competence may be acquired, well, later than the linguistic knowledge of the second language. So when we teach these students, we have to keep in mind the indirect comments may take a longer time for L2 writers to revise. Okay, so wrap up my study. So based on my research, I wanted to present some pedagogical implications. The formative feedback is the process of acculturation in which students gradually adapt to the rules and values of a new academic culture. So explicit the feedback is important, and by giving a specific revision strategy along with the hedges in case we have to provide. Well, and I also want you to keep in mind, so teachers may point to the importance of a meta-linguistic awareness and a programmatic linguistic competence as well in the L2 writing classroom. Okay, these are the references, and I thank you very much for listening.